The first artifact that we selected was a dirty penny and a pretty quarter. When you picture Brazil, you likely think of the beaches, music, and good vibes. What you probably did not know is that Brazil has one of the largest wealth and income gaps in the world. Inequality has been fostered over the years through institutions that promote exclusivity. The dirty penny connected to the clean, pretty quarter represents the two sides of Brazil. On one, the minority, you have the wealthy with a disproportionate amount of money, and on the other hand, you have the majority of Brazilians struggling to get by. While they are all Brazilian, this imbalance strains that link. In the beginning, slavery was in place and wealth and land was concentrated by the small elite. This inequality became generational, and these institutions stayed in place as the years passed. Today, the wealth is still in the hands of a small percentage of Brazilians, and they have access to things like healthcare and education that the lower class often cannot reach. Afro-Brazilians in particular struggle to reach this level and are consistently concentrated at the bottom of the wealth pool. While Brazil has certainly moved towards more inclusive institutions, the exclusivity that has been in place for years consistently pushes power and wealth to the top. The second artifact that we selected was the syringe. In the last 30 or so years, Brazil has been a world superpower in plastic surgery. Tourism pours in from all corners of the world to experience this typically cosmetic surgery, with terms like BBLs and facelifts drawing attention. The syringe represents the injections that come with these surgeries. While this influx is beneficial to the country through tourism revenue and exposure, it generally demonstrates exclusivity in their economy. Brazil as a society has a very high beauty standard that influences social mobility and access to things in communities, and high-quality surgeries that allow for a higher level of beauty are not always accessible because of how expensive they are. These cosmetic surgeries are typically seen among wealthy Brazilians. Therefore, the poor often do not have this opportunity to social and economic advancement. The pressure to meet these beauty standards itself is extractive and increases the strains of inequality. Additionally, the popularity of cosmetic surgery in Brazil is a direct stab to the structural issue of underfunded public health care. While a disproportionate amount of funding goes to plastic surgery, it provides an exclusive nature for essential care. Whether it be lowering the prices for surgeries or lowering the public perception of beauty, something may need to change in Brazil for this sector to be considered inclusive. The third artifact that we selected is coffee. Brazil is undoubtedly the world leader in coffee production, and it has been that way for hundreds of years. In fact, agriculture itself is one of the largest sectors within Brazil. The coffee mix represents this hallmark aspect of the economy. While the returns on coffee has been extremely fruitful for them, it has not always been the most positive spot of Brazil's economy. The coffee industry historically has been built on slave labor. Dating back to the 1800s, landowners used slaves to generate large returns on coffee beans. Even after slavery was abolished in 1888, landowners continued to use immigrant workers at extremely low yields. Slavery is the highest example of exclusivity in an economy, so the country experienced the elite controlling most of the coffee wealth as it was not broadly enjoyed at all. However, today Brazil is going through a shift towards inclusivity in the industry. Coffee supports millions of jobs, especially in the rural areas, and the access for monetary gain has broadened. The development of cooperatives has allowed for these smaller farmers to enjoy better returns for their work. However, it can still be said that the margins for smaller farmers are low compared to global brands that still dominate. However, it is promising to see this tilt towards inclusivity in one of the biggest factors of Brazil's economy.
The fourth artifact that we selected was a broken ballot box, and this signifies the impact politics have on Brazil's economy. The broken ballot box represents the persistent influence of political instability, electoral cycles, and elite-driven decision-making on Brazil's economic institutions. Across the sources, it is clear that Brazil's political system is shown to prioritize short-term electoral gains through fiscal expansion that do not favor the common man and are only made to enhance popularity for the candidate. This undermines long-term planning, discourages investment, and weakens institutional credibility. From a why nations fail perspective, this reflects extractive political institutions. This is where power is concentrated among elites who shape policy for political survival rather than prosperity of the common man. While Brazil has inclusive elements such as an independent central bank and ongoing reforms, the broken ballot box symbolizes how political fragmentation and election-driven incentives repeatedly breaks this. The result is an economy that appears stable on the surface but struggles to translate growth into exclusive long-term development on the outside. The fifth artifact that we selected was a padlock. The padlock signifies the high interest rates in Brazil. The prices are locked in place. They can't go lower, and it seems like they can only stay super high. This locks out large portions of the population from economic opportunity. Many sources emphasize that tight monetary policy, although it is made to control inflation, disproportionately harms small businesses, entrepreneurs, and lower-class people. This directly makes Brazil an extractive institution and clearly displays how in Brazil, the elites continue to rise and the common man is left behind. Credit becomes expensive and scarce, suppressing investment, consumption, and innovation. Wealthy people and firms can navigate these costs while the common man cannot, even further reinforcing extractive economic institutions. Although inflation targeting is an inclusive goal, in Brazil's economy in particular, the way it is drawn out and enforced does not make it so. The padlock reflects how unequal access to capital restricts participation and the opportunity and incentive to innovate and grow, which is seen as a very important part of inclusive institutions. High interest rates thus serve as a powerful symbol of how Brazil's institutions continue to favor elites while constraining inclusive economic development and long-term prosperity for Brazil. The policy artifact that we selected was the sales receipt. This signifies that there was a need to lower taxes in Brazil to facilitate economic growth. The tax receipt as a policy artifact symbolizes Brazil's complex and inefficient tax system and highlights a critical area of institutional weakness that limits the country's economic potential. This artifact represents the need to lower and simplify taxes as the single most effective policy for transforming Brazil into a country of economic prosperity and growth. While Brazil possesses vast natural resources, a large domestic market, and strong agricultural and energy sectors, excessive taxing prevents these advantages from translating into broad-based growth. Brazil's tax system is widely recognized as one of the most complicated in the world, and upon researching it further, it is clear that it is disproportionately harming small businesses, entrepreneurs, and low-income households. According to Santander from a source in 2025, ongoing tax reforms aimed at simplifying goods and services are central to improving economic success and encouraging participation across the economy. High and fragmented taxes raise operating costs, discourage innovation and investment, and thus also reduce productivity for many people who need that extra edge to survive. It's bringing down the common man and hurting Brazil as a whole. In contrast, large firms and politically collected elites are better equipped to navigate these systems, reinforcing extractive economic institutions. From Why Nations Fail perspective, Brazil's current tax structure reflects extractiveness by concentrating advantages among those with money, and the elites who have connections are unable to go around these taxes to continue to obtain what they want, and it hurts the common man. Deloitte's article about Brazil economic outlook reinforces this view by identifying low investment and weak incentives for private sector expansion as key constraints on long-term growth, despite Brazil's underlying strengths, according to Wolf and Swan in 2025. High taxes directly reduce people's wanting of investment, which also makes Brazil a less attractive place for foreign investors. Or lowering and simplifying taxes is the greatest use of Brazil's resources because it acts as a catalyst rather than an intervention and will allow more spending to occur among the middle and lower classes, giving them more money to spend, increasing aggregate demand, which increases investment and the overall economy both in the short run and in the long run. Unlike short-term stimulus, such as from transfer payments, tax reform permanently increases incentives to invest, hire, innovate, and consume. By reducing the cost of economic participation, tax reform helps give people of Brazil the tools they need to create Brazil into an economic powerhouse as time progresses. Additionally, tax reform complements Brazil's strongest sectors while empowering weaker ones. Agriculture and energy already perform well, but manufacturing, services, and technology lag due to cost pressures and regulations. Lower taxes will allow these sectors to grow as it gives the sectors the money they need to invest in more capital and ultimately improve their products. As Santander in 2025 notes, reforms that reduce barriers for business and households strengthen labor markets and long-term resilience. In conclusion, the sale receipt artifact symbolizes how such a simple and little thing can open pathways for inclusive prosperity. Lowering taxes transforms Brazil's institutions from extractive to inclusive by giving all participants, rather than just elites, a fair opportunity to contribute to and benefit from economic growth. Therefore, in the end, as the sale receipt represents that Brazil should decrease their taxes, this sale receipt promotes the fact that by reducing their taxes, Brazil will have the ability to reform from being an extractive institution and turn into an inclusive institution while also achieving the long-term economic growth and success that it is missing for years.